Hey Flatirons, thanks for joining us. Glad you're here. We're in the middle of our series called Echo. It's all about worship and living this with God lifestyle the other 6 days of the week, as well as when we're together on the weekends. So if you want to check out the rest of the messages, look at flatironschurch.com/messages. So glad you're here.
Welcome to Flatirons. How are we? Hey, one of the many, many reasons that I absolutely love this place is because I guarantee this is one of the few churches where you can hear the band play Nirvana and then listen to a sermon on worship, and the two things will make sense together somehow. I promise I will make it make sense for us. But first, I want to do this. I want to get us caught up to speed on what this Echo series is all about, and then I'm going to jump in today because I'm excited. I'm excited about what we're talking about. So Echo, in case you missed last week, need reminded, whatever. We're in the middle of this series that's all about worship, all right? And specifically, it's all about worship as we typically think of it, which is the thing where we get together in rooms like this and we stand and we sing. All right, worship in the general sense is much, much bigger than that, all right? It's not narrowed to just like the couple minutes of standing and singing in here, but for the next couple weeks, that's what I want to look at. The standing and singing version of worship. Why is that worth our time? Is it important? Right? Or is it just an old tradition that we haven't let go of yet and we probably should? Why is it worth 1/3 of our time together on a typical weekend? That's the stuff that I want to figure out. Right? And so we're figuring out this worship thing, and we're also taking lyrics from songs that we sing in here, breaking them down to figure out what is it that we're singing to and about God. In other words, why is he deserving of our worship? Right? And that's what this whole Echo series is about. What is worship? Why is it important? And then who is God and why is he worth worshiping? And today I'm excited because today I get to make promises to you as a church, as a community. So whether you've been going here for 10 years or this is your first week, welcome by the way, whether you've been going here for a long time or not a long time, whatever, I get to make promises to you as a church. I'm very excited about that. But first we got to talk about worship for a little bit, and then I'm going to tell you a story from Jesus' life, and then I'll make those promises. All right, so last week, we learned this about worship. We learned that worship is giving God the credit that he deserves. All right, so when we stand and we sing and we worship God, that is part of our conversational relationship that we have with God. That's what we've been talking about for months in here. All right, so he teaches us something. He tells us something great about himself, and then we echo that greatness back to him in worship. That's how the book of Isaiah puts it. It says, make God's glory resound and echo his praise from coast to coast. That's worship. Last week, we took the song Amazing Grace, one of the most famous songs of all time, broke it down to figure out what are we singing about God when we sing that song, so that we could now give God the credit he deserves for his grace, because his grace is amazing. And then this week, I want to bring back another oldie but a goodie, all right? It's not as old as Amazing Grace. I don't know if there is a song older than Amazing Grace, but this is an oldie and goodie for us. It's a song called Here For You. All right, Here For You, if you've been coming here recently, like within the last year or two, it might not be recognizable immediately to you. That's fine. You can still understand everything that I'm teaching on, and then you'll get to sing it with us here in a minute. We used to play it all the time. All right, all the time. It's kind of faded since then. That's fine, normal. It just happens. We get excited about new songs, and other ones kind of fade away. But here's why I'm bringing this song back for today. All right, it's not just because I'm being random or ran out of ideas or something. Instead, it's because two important reasons. The first one is this, all right? If you have been going to Flatirons for a really long time, like 7 years or longer, then you know that this song has a really special place in the life and history of our church. Right? Because on April 16th in 2011, when we finally opened the doors to the auditorium here in Lafayette, this is the very first song that we sang in here. Very first one, back when this was our only campus. Like intentionally, this is the first thing that we did together as a community in this place, is we sang Here For You. It's the first thing we did when we opened our doors to our West campus. We sang Here For You together in that building. It's the first thing we did when Denver finally got its permanent home on Downing Street. We opened the doors and we sang Here For You together in that building. Hopefully when Aurora and Longmont get their permanent campuses, we'll sing that song together in that building is the very first thing we do. It's a powerful song, and it has a special place in the life and history of our church. There's something about it that it's the first thing we want to do when God gives us this new crazy gift of a place to meet. Right? The second reason that I'm bringing it back up is because of this. That day 7 years ago on April 16th, when we opened the doors to the Lafayette campus, was, and this song specifically, Here For You, both of those things were like a really important piece of my life, spiritually played a really important role in my life. But to tell that story, I decided to sit down with my really, really good friend, Luke Brigette, who played an important role that day 7 years ago. And he and I kind of reminisced on why this song and why that day was so important for very different people and for very different reasons. And hopefully it gives you a picture of the importance of this song in the history of our church. So check this out.
Aside from being just like a scared intern and, never having had a moment like that, just personally leading worship or anything, to sing, "We welcome you with praise." It's like the first words uttered in this building, you know, is awesome.
All right, Luke, so this weekend we're talking about the song Here For You, which we haven't played in a while, but at the same time it's had like a really important role in the history of our church, an important role in my life. And so I want to hear a little bit from your perspective what that day was like when we opened the doors here at the new building at Lafayette. We have all these people filtering in for the first time. Everybody's excited to be here. And we kick off with the song Here For You. It's super quiet, spotlight on you. Why did we play that song?
We could have focused on any number of different things. All day, every day, there's something competing for the throne of worship in our lives. Like, we could have focused on any number of those things, like the influence that we're going to have being in this new building. Look how great we are that we can do all of this new stuff. But specifically choosing that song to go, like, we are going to make a decision to not focus on that stuff and on purpose focus on the God that it is that we want more of. And so when we come together and we sing, "We welcome you with praise," like what we're saying is, it's got to recognize that you are holy, you are set apart, you're what I need. And we're declaring that together, making a decision to go like, God, I want you to be the center.
Yeah, so that day when we opened up the building was actually like a super important day for me spiritually. Because at the time, Allie and I are married. We moved out here because it was beautiful in Colorado. I'm showing up every weekend for Allie, I'm showing up for my family, like they're there. I'm showing up for the music. I'm showing up for all of that stuff. It was just a fun place to be, and there's worse ways to spend an hour of your weekend. The weekend before, that's back when we had the merge service, like the evening service on Sunday. And that service ends and we all carry chairs over. So Jim's like, pick up the chair that you're sitting on and walk it across the street to the new building. And I remember like carrying those chairs and thinking to myself like, this is a really big place, but there's something very family about what we're doing right now. Then we come in, and I was here at the first service that we open up this building, and it's all, it starts and it's quiet and it's just you on stage. I had never been the kind of person to like engage in worship music. And I just had it's almost hard to explain, dude. Like I had a moment where we hit the line, "We are here for you," and it comes out of my mouth. And the best way to explain it is it felt like everybody else disappeared, I felt like it was me alone with God. It was like genuinely a big turning point for me. That's why the song is still so special to me. Because that was the first time I think I ever realized I've been here for Allie, I've been here for my family, I've been here for a number of things. I think I actually want to be here for you. Like I want to be here for more of you. It was the first moment where I was like, I think I'm desperate for you. Like I think I've been desperate for you for 10 years and I didn't realize it till now. And then the song ends like, "We welcome you with praise, we welcome you with praise." And I was able to like kind of spit that out a couple times, but mostly I was just a wreck, dude. It was this moment where God did something in my heart and allowed me to want to be here for more of him.
Instead of like a moment of trying to execute the moment for everybody else. Like I was able to like step into that and have the moment with like alongside everybody else in the seats. And so getting to that space was powerful.
That moment in the life of our church was like, I don't even think about it as a moment in the life of our church.
a moment in
I think about it, a moment in my life. That was big, you know?
yeah, game changer.
Yeah, yep.
So this song, it holds a special place in the life and the history of our church. I hope you got to see a piece of that, and it holds a special place for me. All right, so I've still pulled this song up on Spotify from time to time, and I get chills like immediately, for real. Like, it feels like I'm transported 7 years ago to the seat, like right where you're sitting, like 7 years ago, having this moment, right, where it felt like God reached down into my mess, and it was like in a loving and a patient way. It was like he told me, hey, listen, if you don't invite me into your mess, you're going to stay a mess forever. Still, I hear that song and I go right back there because like we've been talking about, there's something powerful about music that connects to our souls and it can make me remember things that I need to remember. And that moment, it came out of nowhere 7 years ago like a lightning bolt, right? Well, I'm honestly like halfway singing this Here For You song. I'm really just standing because my wife is, you know, and I'm waiting to hear the special, like the Nirvana version of whatever they play there because I'm a big music geek and I'm waiting to hear the sermon and it just came out of nowhere. And it caught me off guard because the whole thing felt like it shouldn't have happened to me because I was a mess. Right? If you know me, you know I'm still very much a mess, but I'm not as much of a mess as I was 7 years ago. At the time, 7 years ago, I figured I'm too much of a mess to worship God. Right? That's for super Christians. All right? And I wasn't a super Christian. I didn't even know what I believed in yet. And so I figured that God was probably very excited to hear from everybody that day, except for me, because I'm too much of a mess. And then it turned out not to be the case. That's why it caught me so off guard. It's like, here I am, I'm a mess, and God's talking to me anyways, trying to show me something. And then my reaction to the whole thing also caught me off guard, right? Because instead of wanting to run and hide my mess from him, which I had always assumed would be the case, instead I found myself wanting to like abandon it and just be like, just give him my mess. And be like, what can we do about this together? How can you help me? How can you heal me? See, I didn't realize it until much, much later. But what I was experiencing that day was true worship. And it's the reason that worship will always be important until the end of time. Because when we experience true worship together, here's what's happening. God welcomes our mess into his presence, and we welcome God into our mess. Let that sink in for a second. Because again, worship is part of our conversational back and forth relationship with God. So God welcomes our mess into his presence. God says to us, just like the Nirvana song we listened to, he says, come as you are. You just come at 100% as you are. Bring all of you in here. And then we greet that and we welcome God into our mess. We respond by going, okay, thank you. If that's the case, come and see the mess I've made. What can we do about this together? True worship is God welcomes our mess into his presence, and we welcome God into our mess, and we can't forget that. All right, one of my churchy pet peeves, all right, now that I've worked at a church for years, I realize I've developed pet peeves about church, which is weird. College Ben would kill me for that. But one of my churchy pet peeves is this, all right? It's when someone gets up and prays and they say something like, "Dear God, help us to forget all of the stress and baggage and worries that we walked in here with so we can hear from you." It's a pet peeve of mine. I know that most people, when they say that, what they're trying to say is, God, please help us to not get distracted. But it's a pet peeve because for me, it sounds too much like, dear God, help us to suspend reality so that we can be with you. It comes across too much like, dear God, I'm going to leave all my baggage behind for the next hour because I don't want to bother you with it. And I hate that. All right, because I know I cannot be alone in this. All right, but I have had weekends in my past, and I know I'll have weekends in my future where I drag myself through the doors. I come crawling. I barely make it through the building. My reality has beaten me down. My worries and baggage and stress have left me in a place of desperation. And if I can't, if you can't, if we can't bring the reality of our mess into this room every single weekend, throw it at God's feet and say, please help. If instead we got to check all that stuff at the door, put a smile on our face, and then pick it all back up when we walk out, then what are we doing here? Seriously, what is the point of this if we have to suspend reality in order to be here? I don't need to suspend reality. I need a God who can fix my reality. I don't need to check my baggage at the door. I need a God who can handle my baggage. And thankfully, not only can God handle our mess, but he's uniquely committed to it. This is the case in all of the Bible from front to back. He is uniquely committed to our mess. Jesus himself was constantly criticized and slandered by religious people of his day for spending time with the messiest people he could find. He did that on purpose. He sought out the sickest of the sick. He sought out the roughest of the rough. He became friends with, spent time with, had dinner with criminals and political traitors, adulterers, murderers, you name it. And then when he was criticized, when people look at him and they go, Jesus, why do you spend time with messy, broken people like that? He responds like this. He goes, listen, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. And I've not come to call the righteous. I've not come to call the people who think they're doing fine on their own. I've come to call the sinners. See, Jesus basically says, he goes, why else do you think I'm here? I am here specifically for the people who are willing to hand me their mess. Jesus is uniquely committed to fixing our mess. I promise he's more committed to that than anyone you will ever meet. And when we worship him, we're choosing to intentionally remember that God welcomes our mess into his presence. And so we welcome God into our mess. And that is what this Here For You song is all about. All right, I want to pull some of the lyrics out of this song and kind of explain them to you. I'm not going to break down every single verse of the song because we don't have time, but I'll give you enough of the lyrics so that you know what it is we're worshiping God for here in a few minutes when we sing it. All right, so first of all, the whole song builds and builds and builds on this concept that we're talking about, that God welcomes our mess and we welcome God into our mess. And there's a lyric in there that repeats over and over and over again. We end up singing this part like probably a dozen times in the middle of the song, and it's this: we are here for you. All right, we're here for you. And I want to explain what that means. All right, because here's what it doesn't mean, all right? It doesn't mean like, hey, God, we're here to help you out. Like, what do you need from us this week? That's not what it means. All right, when we sing that, we're not saying that we're here for God in the sense that God is like sitting on his hands, waiting around for us to show up because he can't get anything done without us. All right, no, instead, when we sing that line, we're saying that we're here for God in the sense that we're here for him and for him only. He's all we want. All right, or as Paul put it in one of his most famous sermons, he says this. He says, and he, God, is not served by human hands as if he needed anything, because he himself gives life and breath and everything else. Paul's basically saying, listen, God doesn't need us. He's perfect on his own. Instead, we need God, because God is the one who gives men life and breath and everything else. All right, so we're here for him. We're here for you. When we sing that over and over again, what we're saying together is this. We're saying, God, we're not here to check the church box off of our list. All right, and we're not even here to feel warm and fuzzy about and better about ourselves. We're not here for that. And we're certainly not here to help you out because you need help. Instead, we are here for you and for you only because we know and we admit that we're desperate and we're lost and we're gasping for air without you. We're here for him and him only. And that's the case for several reasons. All right, so one of the reasons is what this whole series is about. We're here for him. We gathered together today in these buildings, campuses. We're here for him today to worship him, all right, to give him the credit that he deserves, to echo his greatness back to him. And this song talks about that. We're also here to refocus on God. All right, because here's the truth. Like last week was hard. It was for me at least. Next week will be more of the same. Right, so we gather together as a people to turn our heads back toward him and refocus on him because we know that he's the one who's going to get us through week after week after week. And this song talks about that. We're here for him and for him only for a lot of reasons, but the reason that I want to spend the rest of our time talking about is in the fourth verse of this song, which goes like this. Let your word move in power and let what's dead come to life. We're here for you. We're here for that. For your word to move in power so that what's dead can come back to life. In my opinion, this is the most important part of the song. And it's the most important because it is the most important thing that we believe in. All right, this is the reason that for thousands of years now, Christians keep getting together in buildings to remember this, is because we believe this. We believe that Jesus brings dead things back to life. We do believe that. All right, without that belief, Christianity doesn't exist. Built on a lie. It's a fairy tale. It's a myth that you should run. But if it is true, then it's the most important thing going on in the world, and we're a mess without it. Jesus brings dead things back to life. My question for us today is this. We might claim that's true, but do we believe it? Do we really believe, practically speaking, that that can happen? That's my question for today. I'm assuming that most of us, probably all of us in the room, whether you've been going to church your whole life or this is your first time here, you probably know the fundamental belief of Christianity, right? Which is that Jesus died, and 3 days later, he walked out of the tomb alive again. And now if you put your faith in him, meaning you believe he is who he says he is and he'll keep all of his promises to you, if you put your faith in him, now our tombs and our graves don't have to be our last stop anymore. That is the best picture possible of Jesus bringing dead things back to life. It's actually not what I want to talk about today, though. Instead, I want to talk about this. I can't help but think that the day that Jesus walked out of his tomb, I bet his friends and family couldn't shake the feeling of, oh, we've seen this before. I bet they couldn't shake the memory of a moment that Jesus had between him and a guy named Lazarus that they all experienced a few weeks before, and that's the story I want to tell you right now. All right, so Jesus is friends with a family in a town called Bethany. All right, family is 2 sisters and a brother, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. I'm assuming that their parents were the kind of family that wanted to name all their kids with M's and then they just forgot on the 3rd kid or something. Maybe Mazarus was out of style that year, so they went Lazarus. I don't know. But Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, they pop up all over Jesus' biographies in the Bible. All right, so one day, Jesus is in a different city. He's not in Bethany, and he's hanging out with people and teaching them and talking to them. And Mary and Martha send a messenger to him with an urgent message. Like, Jesus, our brother Lazarus, he's sick and he's dying and he's on his deathbed. And what Mary and Martha are hoping for is that Jesus is going to drop everything that he's doing and sprint back to Bethany and heal him because they've seen him do this. They're hoping for a miracle in a literal sense from Jesus. By the time Jesus eventually does get to Bethany, though, Lazarus is dead. Right? He's been dead for 4 days. He's been buried in a tomb now for 4 days. It's too late. All right? In fact, this is exactly how Martha greets Jesus when she sees him. She goes, it's too late. Look at this. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, and Mary stayed at home. And Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, if you had hurried up, my brother wouldn't have died. See, Martha's defeated, and she's mourning the loss of her brother, and out of that place, she basically reprimands Jesus, which generally is like not a good idea to do. And she reprimands him, and she goes, Jesus, you're too late. All right, he's dead and gone. I mean, thanks for showing up, but you should have gotten here earlier. Why couldn't you have hurried up? It's too late. Jesus is patient with her, though. He's gracious, and he says this. He goes, listen, Martha, your brother will rise again. He goes, listen, Martha, I'm actually not too late, and he's actually not as dead and gone as you think he is. But Martha doesn't get it. She has no context for what he's about to do in their lives. No one does. Can't blame her for not getting it. And so she dismisses him, and she gives him a churchy answer, which can we please stop doing that? A churchy answer is something that you heard in church, and you feel like you know you're supposed to say it, but you don't believe it. And she gives him a churchy answer. She says, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection at the last day. I know. What Martha's saying is this. She's going, yeah, I know, Jesus. I know my brother is in a better place, but I don't want him in that place. I want him here with me. And that could have been the case, but you were late. And so now he's dead and gone. Martha's just like us when it comes to the people that we've loved and lost. Like, for example, my grandpa. Like, I know my grandpa's in a better place now. I just miss him. I wish I could have had one more visit, one more conversation with the man. That's where Martha's headspace is at. But because she's so consumed with that, she missed the promise that Jesus just made, that it's not too late and that he's not dead and gone. And so Jesus says it to her one more time, and he actually asks her the question that I am asking us today. All right, he says this. He goes, listen, Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. I bring dead things back to life. That's my specialty. And he goes, he who believes in me will live even though he dies. So Jesus will bring life in the here and now to all of the things that we have declared dead and gone. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. So Jesus will also bring us life after death. And then he asks her the question. He goes, do you believe this? Jesus brings dead things back to life. Do we believe this? And Martha still can't see it, so she dismisses him again. Mary comes out. Mary and Jesus have a very similar conversation, but she can't see it yet either. And so finally, Jesus asks to visit Lazarus' tomb. It says this, so he, Jesus, was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. He's sad because death sucks. He's deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he asks him, he goes, where have you laid him? And they reply, they go, come and see, Lord. And Jesus wept. So this is important. Hang on to this. Martha and Mary, they look at Jesus and they say, come and see. And come and see Lazarus' tomb. And then they walk down there together, mourning the loss of their brother and their friend. When they get down to the tomb, this is what happens next. Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb, and it was a cave laid with a stone across the entrance. And he says, take away the stone. Take away, I want to walk in, I want to go see Lazarus. And Martha has common sense, and so she goes, but Lord, listen, no. By this time there's a bad odor, for he's been in there for 4 days. And what Martha is saying to Jesus is a conversation that a lot of us have had with Jesus. I have, at least. What Martha is saying here is this: Jesus, you're not getting it. It's too late. He's dead and gone. All right? He's decaying in there right now. He's rotting in there. Don't make our family go through that. Don't go in there. Stay out. It's over. But Jesus won't let up. And he goes, didn't I tell you that if you believed, you'd see the glory of God? Or in other words, he goes, how many times do I have to tell you, when you're dealing with me, it's never too late? And so he convinces them. And they roll the stone away from the tomb, and Jesus stands at the entrance of the tomb. He prays, and then this happens. Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. And then the dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped with strips of linen and a cloth around his face. The part after this is one of my favorite parts. Jesus goes up to Lazarus and he goes, Lazarus, take your grave clothes off. Because they would wrap them in these grave clothes, it's like a mummy, basically. He goes, take your grave clothes off, which I think is hilarious because Lazarus is going to be so confused. And Jesus is like, hey, Lazarus, you're not dead anymore. Stop dressing like a dead man. Basically what he says. It's also hard not to think of Monty Python. You know, I'm not dead yet, that whole thing. That's why I don't do accents also. But the crowd is shocked, right? The family is overwhelmed. They're throwing a party. They can't believe it. They never saw this coming. The religious leaders, they're furious. There is now a mark on Lazarus' head. That poor guy has to die again. And there's a mark on Jesus' head, all right? The crowd is in total shock. And the reason is because Lazarus is up and walking around after being dead and buried for 4 days straight. Jesus just brought a dead thing back to life. And I can't help but think that when Jesus himself walked out of his tomb, his friends and family were going, oh, we should have seen this coming. We should have known this would have happened. We've seen this before. Now, as hard as it can be, and I didn't help with a Monty Python joke, as hard as it can be, we have to understand that at Flatirons at least, we do not claim that this is a parable. All right? We claim that this is not a metaphor, it's not a fairy tale, it's not a myth. We claim that this happened historically, like it really happened, that Jesus really did stand at the entrance of a dead man's tomb and utter 3 words. That's all he did was talk. He said, Lazarus, come out, and he flipped death on its head. But let me go back to my question today. We might claim that to be true, but do we really believe it? Do we believe we'll see this in our own lives, that Jesus brings dead things back to life? And here's my bet. All right, I'll bet that for a lot of us in this room, maybe even most of us, and I have been in your shoes before, and I'll probably be there again, but for a lot of us in this room, we look at that one sentence on the screen, and we roll our eyes, and in our heads, we think the same thing that Martha said out loud to Jesus. We think to ourselves, yeah, I know. I get it. All right, I've put my faith in Jesus, and I know that when I die, I'll go to that heaven place. I get it. But my life in the here and now, it sucks. And I have stuff in my life that's just a hopeless mess. I have stuff in my life that is good as dead. It's too late. It's never coming back. It's never getting better. It's okay to be honest here about that. We all have stuff in our lives that we have declared dead and gone. As an example, maybe that's our marriage. We said it's too late, and so we've settled for an unfulfilled marriage. We're putting up with each other until the kids get out of the house. We've started justifying the drinking and the addiction, the pornography, the affair, because how else am I going to cope with this dead and gone marriage of mine? Maybe it's our joy that we wrote off as dead and gone, too late. We hate what we see in the mirror, right? We just see someone who's ugly or fat or scrawny or stupid, right? We see a bad father. We see a desperate, failing mother. Or we're finding it harder and harder to hang on in the midst of depression and anxiety. And so we take our happiness and we take our joy and we say it's dead and gone. That is never coming back in my life. It's never getting better. And whenever we reach that place in our hearts, we do what everyone else does with dead stuff. We roll the stone over the tomb, and we try our best to seal it up for good, keep it out of sight, out of mind. We try our best to keep it contained and not let it bother any of the people that we care about, because we know that our wives, our husbands, our parents, kids, friends, whoever, they can't handle it. They can't handle our mess. They can't handle the stuff that is rotting inside of us that we've said is good and dead. And so we try to pretend like it's over, like we can move on, like it's not hurting anybody. But it's not over. And we can't move on. It's getting harder and harder to contain our mess, to keep our brokenness from seeping out onto the people we love the most. What do we do about this? How does this change, and where is our hope? And our hope is found in the 4th verse of this Here For You song. Again, it goes like this: let your word move in power, and let what's dead come back to life. We're here for you. We're here for that. For your word to move in power, and let what's dead come back to life. If there is any hope of the dead stuff that you and I have in our lives coming back to life, it's only going to be through Jesus, and it's found in his word moving in power. That sounds very churchy, so what do I mean by that? I mean like his literal words. He stood at the entrance of Lazarus' tomb, and all he did was talk. He spoke. He said, "Come out." And Lazarus came out alive. And we still believe that at the entrances of all of our tombs, the places where we've kept all the dead stuff sealed up, we believe he still has the power to show up and speak. And then dead things will come back to life. Meaning the only way a dead marriage, a dead sexuality, a dead anything, the only way those things come back to life is by holding on to what Jesus said to be true. To hold on to his word, to hold on to his truth. Because his word is what moves in power and brings dead things back to life. Again, cover to cover in the Bible, this is true. Jesus one time is hanging out with a group of people who already believe him, which is largely what this group is today. All right, and he says to them this, it's still true today. He goes, listen, if you hold to my teaching, all right, to my word, then you're really my disciples. And if you do that, then you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And so for us, if we learn to listen to and love and apply the truth and teachings from Jesus that we hear about on the weekend or that we hear throughout the week, if we hold on to that word, it can set us free and make dead things come back to life. The scary thing is that if we're going to hold on to Jesus' truth, like he talks about, then we have to give him the true version of ourselves. The real us with all of the mess, not the fake us, not the mask. And there's a lot of risk that comes with that. Which is why it's so important to understand the heart and the nature of true worship with God, which is this: God welcomes that. He welcomes our mess into his presence, and from that place of safety, we welcome God into our mess. God welcomes our mess into his presence. So listen to me. You don't need to clean yourself up in order to begin following and worshiping and believing in our God. In the words of the late and great theologian Kurt Cobain, come as you are. Seriously, come as you are. Bring all of you in here. Don't suspend your reality when you're in here for an hour. Jesus is interested in your reality. He's not interested in your mask. And don't check your baggage at the door. I certainly didn't. Bring it in here with you. This is why we are here. Come as you are. And then from that place of safety, we welcome God into our mess. And this is so important. If you could hear one thing from my talk, I want you to hear this. We have the freedom to look at Jesus just like Mary and Martha did and say to him, Jesus, come and see. Come and see my tomb. Come and see the place where I have buried all the sadness and the pain and the guilt and the shame. Come and see the place where I have tried to bury haunting memories from my past. I've buried all my hopes of a future. I've called them dead and gone. Jesus, come and see my tomb. Jesus, come and roll that stone back and bring some of this dead stuff back to life. Come and see. We welcome Jesus into our mess, into our tombs. which is why I love this Here For You song so much. It's powerful because throughout the song, we are echoing that truth. And like we're about to sing together, we're going to sing this. God, to you our hearts are open. Nothing here is hidden. You're my one desire. Or in other words, God, to you our hearts are open. I've rolled the stone back. And then we beg him to walk into our tombs. And we say, we welcome you with praise. We welcome you with praise. Almighty God of love, be welcomed in this place, in this tomb. Because if this dead stuff is going to come back to life, that's going to be on you. So be welcomed in this place and be welcomed into my tomb. That's what we're about to thank God for and worship him for when we sing that song together. Now, I get to make promises to you, which I'm excited about. We're going to pray in a minute, and then we'll stand and we'll sing this song together. Again, I'm asking for the same thing as last weekend. It's 3 more minutes of your time. Let's stand and sing the song together all the way through the end. But before we do that, I need you to hear this. Whether you've been going here for 10 years or this is your first weekend, please listen to me. Because we as a church at Flatirons believe that God looks at you and says, come as you are, we also as a church say the same thing to you. Come as you are. Because Jesus is uniquely committed to your mess, so are we as a church. We're uniquely committed to your mess. As a church here at Flatirons, we're not asking you to clean yourself up first in order to walk through the front doors. Instead, we're telling you, you're welcome in this place. One of the main reasons I ran from Jesus for so long is because I saw something in his church that I hated, and I still hate it. I saw that Christians had a tendency to shoot their wounded. What I mean by that is this. I mean, at a lot of churches, unfortunately, everything's hunky-dory. As long as you have a smile on your face, you're happily married, your kids are behaving, and you're spotlessly clean. But then when you need to open up and share some of the dark, hard stuff that you're walking through, then a lot of churches will shame you and shun you out the door. They shoot their wounded. I was in a meeting the other day, last Sunday actually, with a bunch of men, and some of these men were pastors at other churches. One of these pastors, he stands up and he admits, he goes, years ago when I was a pastor at this other church, I felt like I had a bunch of sexual addiction in my life that I needed to tell someone about, but I couldn't tell anybody. And he never did tell anybody. He said he would have gotten fired for it. And his direct quote was this. He said, I couldn't tell anyone about that stuff because, quote, you can't bring stuff like that up in church. And that breaks my heart because the way that Jesus designed this place, I mean, church should be the place to bring stuff like that up. The sad truth is that there's just a lot of stuff that you can't talk about at most churches. My promise to you is this. At Flatirons, you can. That will always be the case here. There's that line from the Nirvana song we just played where he sings over and over again. He goes, I swear I don't have a gun. No, I don't have a gun. No, I don't have a gun. We swear the same thing. No, we don't shoot our wounded. We don't shoot our wounded. We don't shoot our wounded. We won't do it. We never will. I promise. We swear. Because Jesus is uniquely committed to your mess, so are we as your church. Jesus himself said he didn't come here for the healthy. He didn't come here for the people who think they're doing fine on their own. He came here for the people who are sick and need a doctor. He came here for people who can admit, I'm a mess and I need Jesus. I'm desperate for Jesus. And we're going to be a church that loves people like Jesus. And so Flatirons has always been, still is, and will always be like a hospital for sick people. And we're getting better slowly over time because of Jesus, but we will never kick you out of the hospital for acting sick. That's ridiculous. We won't do it ever. And that's our promise. You're welcome in this place. So come as you are and stick around because we don't shoot our wounded here. We don't shoot our wounded here. We don't. We promise. Listen, if you're sitting in the seats and you're thinking, yeah, that's not true, that's just proof. All these people clapping, we've all come crawling in here wounded before, and we didn't get shot. We didn't shoot our wounded here. Listen, it's real. And if you're sitting here, and that sounds freeing to you, like it did 7 years ago for me, if you have got a tombstone rolled over your heart and there's stuff dead and rotting in there and you have convinced yourself it's dead and gone, it's too late, then you specifically just need to hear me right now. I want to end with this. Listen, This thing we do here on the weekends, this is not the only thing we do as a church. We have programs all throughout the week. We have campus pastors at every single campus. We have care pastors who meet with people nonstop throughout the week, who help people to roll tombstones away in their heart so that Jesus' word can still speak power and bring dead things back to life. You can get connected with these people. You can get connected with these programs so that you can see for yourself if Jesus' word, his truth, is still powerful enough to bring dead stuff back to life. You can do that starting today. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do, after this, we're going to sing the song. After that, I am walking to the lobby at Lafayette. Our campus pastors are walking to the lobby at all of our campuses. You can call our care pastors on the weekday. You can come and talk to us at the info desk. You can do this starting today, but the ball's in your court. You have to come and talk to us. You have to come and ask us. But if I can make you one promise about Jesus that I know on a very intimate, deep, personal level, it would be this. I promise that what is dead in your life doesn't have to stay dead. I promise. Your marriage, your kids, your finances, your unemployment, your addiction, I promise to you, it is not too late for any of those things when you are dealing with Jesus. It is his specialty. He brings dead things back to life. All you got to do is come talk to us. And so I'm going to pray. And then we're going to sing this Here For You song together. We're going to thank God for allowing our mess to stand in his presence. We're going to ask him to be welcomed into our mess. And then some of you are going to come talk to us in our lobbies at all of our different campuses because there are some tombstones in your heart that you need to roll back. And I promise you that of all the churches I've ever seen in my entire life, this is the place to get started. Pray with me. God, in a series about worship, in a series that would be so easy to be designed just for the people who are super Christians or just for the people who really like that, the first ones up out of the chairs, first ones to put their hands in the air. God, I pray you teach something to the rest of us. God, I pray you teach something to the people like me who 7 years ago, it's like you're just kind of hiding here, just curious. God, I thank you for the promise that you've made us, that you welcome our mess into your presence, that you can handle it. And God, I thank you for what your son Jesus did for us. He brings dead things back to life in our hearts. God, what I'm praying for today is an ounce of bravery, just an extra ounce of courage for some of the people in the room who they can feel it on their tongues. They can feel it like I think I'm about to say the words, I need to tell you something that I've never told anyone else before. God, give those people an extra ounce of bravery, an extra ounce of courage, because you welcomed those people into your presence. You've welcomed me into your presence. And so we welcome you into our mess. God, please give us that little extra ounce of courage today to begin that. And God, I thank you so much for this church. I thank you so much for the chance to get to be around a bunch of people that I can say something like, we don't shoot our wounded here, and everybody claps. Because we came crawling through these doors wounded years ago. And now we're up and we're standing and we're walking around, and that's because of you. And that's because you gave us this place to get that work done, and I thank you for that. God, please do that today. Please give those people an extra ounce of bravery, an extra ounce of courage. And God, please bring dead stuff back to life in our hearts. I know you will, and I thank you in advance for that. I love you very much, and I pray this in your son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen.